Hello, I'm your host, Jean-Paul Baran, President of Focus on the Family Canada. Welcome to The Thriving Family, a Focus on the Family Canada podcast. This is the space where family, faith, and culture intersect. You can enjoy the Thriving Family podcast ad-free without any interruptions, thanks to generous donors who support our ministry. In this season of the podcast, we're talking about God's full life for you. Along with sound bites on marriage, parenting, and life challenges, we're bringing intimate conversations with leaders from a wide range of ministry backgrounds and life experiences, who have all generously taken the time to share their heart with you. If you like what you hear, be sure to rate the episode wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to check out each episode notes for related resources and for how to support the Thriving Family podcast. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce Jenni Colwell. Jenni was born and raised in Southern Ontario and has served alongside her husband Mark in ministry for 30 years. They have 4 adult children and 1 beautiful granddaughter. Jenni currently serves at the BC and Yukon district of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada as the Children and Family Ministers Director, as well as the Family Life Pastor at Christian Life Assembly in Maple Ridge, BC. Her passion is to intentionally invest in pastors, leaders, and parents as they spiritually form the next generation, and she still loves to teach kids' church on Sunday mornings. On her day off, you might just find her walking through the woods with her family, taking in the beauty of God's creation. Jenni and I had a beautiful conversation about community, and I can't wait for you to hear what she shared. Hi, Jenni. Thanks for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to build on the conversation of how families are thriving and how you're making an impact for the next generation. You shared with me that you've been married for 30 years and have 4 adult children, and how that is such an incredible journey that you guys are on, and that your 4 children are actually in ministry. Tell me a little bit about what they're doing right now.
My oldest just graduated from Teachers College in Ontario, but has come to British Columbia to join us. And he has recently accepted a job at a Christian school in town. And so he's going to be investing in the next generation through education. My second born, she is a worship pastor. She's on maternity leave right now. I get to be a grandma. That's wonderful. But and she helps her husband, who is a youth pastor. They do that together. So they're investing in the next generation. My third born, she graduated in April from Summit Pacific Bible College, and she has just taken a job as a children's pastor. And the last one is still in school, but serving right alongside of us at church, as my husband Mark is the lead pastor at the CLA Maple Ridge. And we get to do life and ministry together as a family, and it is one of my greatest joys. That is
so encouraging to hear. And, you know, for our audience's information, with the 4 kids that you have, and part of your ministry is, and what you've been doing, is to invest in pastors, leaders, parents, how they spiritually form for the next generation. And so the next generation with your children, you know, you basically, they have heard you and Mark speak and have taken that torch and are carrying it through. You know, to start, one of the questions I have is, there are so many ministry models for making disciples of Christ, and churches have gotten incredibly innovative in doing so. However, statistics show that church attendance is declining. Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, what are some of the causes for this decline?
Well, definitely the lack of building community, or the wanting to build community around the church body. I think if you look at the book of Acts 2, where they regularly met together in the temple, and they regularly met together in people's homes. I think that is something that's lacking. And, you know, when I think of church, I think, yes, we do have more people. Like even Sunday, I met many new people, and we have people coming out. But I think what's really the issue of church attendance is the regularity in which they attend as families. Many are attending maybe once or twice a month. And so people don't feel the need to meet together in church for their spiritual formation, for their discipleship and the discipleship of their children as regularly maybe as we did in the past. And so there's this gap where maybe if you're coming only 12 or 20 times a year, there's this gap where your children, your family isn't in relationship with the body of Christ for community. And it really does affect the discipleship process. There is things that compete for people's priorities. And when we don't make meeting together a priority, it does affect our own discipleship process and the spiritual formation of our children and our families. So, yeah, I heard a statistic, and it probably is an American statistic, but if you have an attendance of 180 in your church, you likely have a church of 500. And so getting people to build community in other ways needs to be something that we lean into for sure.
Yeah, I fully agree with you and resonate with that as there's two folds to that. Focus Canada is making a strong impact into churches, an investment into churches. We want to be involved with our church community as best as possible, where you're starting to see if less people are going to church, and us as a parachurch, as our ministry, and any other parachurch ministry, if there's less people going to churches, there will be less people hearing our message 100%. And helping families thrive. And how do you get into that? As I travel around and visit many churches and engage with church leaders, there's two things I've noticed. One is there are church attendance is declining, and those are churches that are kind of like on shaky ground, orthodoxly, if that's a word, theologically, not solid ground theologically. The ones that are thriving are ones that are like, this is what we believe in, and we're not being apologetic of what we're saying, what we're preaching from the pulpit. The challenge I see is that there's not new believers coming. So people going to different churches, but not new people coming to Christ. And then also in our children, which you touched on, is the quest for community.
Yes. Every
single child, and as a parent of two, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old now, they're on their phone all the time. There's no way around it. Mm-hmm. And they're craving community, but they're on their own. And they are not in community, if you will. And so how do you touch on that? How do you bring those kids out of kind of the community of the social world of their phone to actually having one-on-one conversations of what we're having now? What brings that? How do you bring that out in them?
Well, if I believe that parents are the spiritual they're the spiritual champions in their home. They have the best chance at spiritually forming their children. And so the habits that they create in their home are actually going to either raise their kids for the kingdom but intentionally, or they're going to just by default, like you said, just go and be on their phones and be, in this individual world of their own. And I think if we as parents intentionally decide that we are going to create habits in our home that bring the family together in moments where we can have spiritual moments. I 100% believe that the dinner table is one of those habits where families, moms, dads, kids can come around the table, doesn't matter what age, and have these moments where they have conversation, where they have prayer, where they talk about their day, and they can talk about the things of God. They can even crack open the word, The dinner table seems to be such a stabilizing force in the life of a family. But as parents, we need to be intentional about it. Our lives are as busy as they've ever been. But if you can make that habit, if you can put that stake in the ground and say, we are going to be around the table for, maybe you say 4 dinners a week, and have this kind of rule of life in your home where you're around the table. And you know what? Invite other people around the table with you. People that can rub shoulders with your children, that you would want them in their life. I mean, in my own upbringing, my spiritual formation, my parents did this so well. My mom and dad were some of the most hospitable people I've ever met. And they regularly brought people around our table. And Christians, non-Christians, neighbors, pastors, we always had people around the table. And in those moments, and I know I shared this not too long ago when I was here doing a chapel, this one family that were very close to us, and being around their table, being invited to their table was discipleship for me. They may have taught me Sunday school, but they also lived it out around their table. I remember sitting at that table, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, pausing to pray and listening to my best friend's dad give thanks in such a way that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this man really loved Jesus. And those people in my life really helped me in my walk with the Lord. And having my parents be people that did life in community made me 100% want to live that out in my own children's lives. If you have children in your home that have an issue where they can't put their phone down or they're always on a video game or whatever, I mean, the table is a place where it maybe is a phone-free zone.
Right.
Maybe it's a place where you ask everybody their rose and thorn of the day. What is the best thing that happened to you today? What is the hardest thing, that most challenging thing that happened to you today? In these conversations, you have an opportunity to bring in maybe the Word of God and say, oh, this is what the Word of God says about what you're going through.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The dinner table is one where you can draw out the conversation. You know, in our home, with it, I wonder if it's different now with your children being adult children, and I'm sure they kind of carried that tradition on. In our home, no one really talks at the dinner table until we get a few bites in because we're all tired.
And hungry.
And hungry. Angry. What's the term for it?
Hangry.
We're all hangry. But once we're about halfway through our plate, then the conversation starts. And in our home, it's not rocket science. We're not talking about how we're solving the world's problems. We're talking about, hey, who's going to walk the dog? And then it builds to a story. One of the traditions we have at home is there is no cell phones allowed at the dinner table. And it's led by mom and dad. Susan and I lead that where there's no exceptions. We're all busy. Susan's exceptionally busy as a school teacher. I am, I'd like to say, not as busy as her during the school years, but still busy. And we just put the phones kind of away from the table. We have it set up where we used to use the excuse of using our phones to get the music going.
Right.
So we just invested in something. You just have to speak and then the music is played. That way we just found a way away from the phones. But keeping the traditions, you touched on traditions. One of the great things about even Christians in our faith is the traditions that we do. And when others see the traditions that we do, where just praying before dinner, people resonate with that. When we have people over in our house that don't believe in the Lord, we still say unapologetically, we're just taking time to acknowledge our Savior, Jesus Christ, and we say a quick prayer. And everyone who comes to our table knows that. However, the one I ask is, what other tools and nuggets do you have in your treasure chest of how to make traditions for families to carry conversations other than just the dinner table? I'm sure you got a few.
Well, I think that a lot of, if I look back on raising my kids, one of the things that I think we did well was to have connections around holidays and special occasions, birthdays. And a lot of it did happen around the dinner table. One of the things that we did as a family is whenever it was somebody's birthday or even Father's Day or Mother's Day, whoever was being celebrated in those moments, we would go around the couch or the table or wherever we were sitting, and everybody had to say something special about that person. And then we had a prayer over them at the end. And now that they're adults, I see them doing that in their own contexts with their friends even.
Oh, I love it.
And so it's just a moment to stop and encourage one another, a moment to say publicly how you feel about someone, how they've made your life better, or how you've learned something from them, and just to encourage people on those special moments. So that's something we do. And now, because I have 4 young adult children, the house is filled sometimes with a lot of other young adults. And we just had a birthday party for my youngest, and we probably had about 20 people in the room, and they all went around and said something. And it was just a really life-giving moment. Again, no phones. It was just people face to face loving on each other and encouraging each other.
Yeah, I think that's so great to hear. And I believe we're in a season that so many people are craving that one-on-one connections or in a group connection piece. For children and to hear that your family's carrying that on as young adults, one of the things that I often hear from families is those traditions they set. And in the teenage years, most kids kind of grumble about doing it. Even in that grumbling, the next year, they're like, hey, are we doing that again? And they look forward to doing and building those traditions, which is really incredible. Even the tradition of attending church as families. It's always a challenge, and I know there's many families out there. It's a challenge bringing when we're going through this as the teenagers, do they really want to attend church? I mean, it means getting up early on a Sunday. And how do you keep that tradition going? I believe as parents and we're leaders as parents and leading our children in the next generation. For Susan and I, we just go to church every Sunday. So part of our rhythm, that's what we do. And our kids don't attend with us all the time, but they know mom and dad are at church. And then there's that occasion they pop up a little earlier and they're like, hey, are we all going? But you are seeing it. We are all seeing it. Church attendance is down, and families aren't able to get to church as regularly as we used to, it seems like. Where else can we find communities and connections other than just our church?
That's a great question. I think one of the reasons why families are pulled from church is sports. Oftentimes things happen on those church attendance times. But you know what?
You're absolutely right. In the state of Texas, there are 2 things that are very important. And I'm using an analogy here with my finger, but number 1 is God. And then the number 1 finger is football on Sundays.
Yes.
And that's a silly joke about Texas, but in Canada as families we get so busy, wrapped up on all the activities that our children are doing. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. It's absolutely true. I feel like even when my kids were young and involved in sports, it just wasn't at the frequency that people are involved these days, more tournaments or more practice, whatever it is, or multiple sports at a time. And so if your children are involved in sport and if you are there, and you can actually build community in that team. You could, many probably parents out there are coaching their child's team, and
I'm one of them.
There you go. And this can be a wonderful opportunity to build community with Christians and non-Christians, right? And I remember my husband coaching my son's baseball team for years and years and years. And he was obviously very vocal about his faith. And I mean, they knew he was a pastor. So they called him Bishop Mark. They loved him. They loved having him. They loved having him as one of the coaches. And I remember every year we had this baseball fields that were not city owned, and so they had all these trees. And every year he would bring the whole youth group, and they would rake up these leaves at the beginning of the season. They would prepare the park, and they just thought this was amazing. And so, if you're out there, if your kids are already involved in these communities, use it as evangelism. Use it as an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Love on those kids. Pour into them. Share your faith.
I love how you say that. I mean, I am a huge sports fan. It drives my wife crazy of the amount of time I spend in watching sports and trying to engage in it. I honestly feel what you touched on is that could be the only time where you have a group of young people and their parents around you that will actually see what it is to walk with the Lord and to engage with them and show what that means and the commitment to God. One of the things we used to say is we knew our schedule, and church, we had a stronger influence when our kids were younger. Mm-hmm. And so we said church is the priority, and we would go. And if the game is on, if it's a normal game, church takes the priority. But we also didn't want to let the team down. And so if it was like a cup game or a tournament, we would make that exception and say, okay, we're coming to the game. But as a coach, I would tell that up front in a very subtle way. We would say, we have a commitment on Sundays. And sometimes they wouldn't say anything. But then as the years went by, or the season and then into years, people just knew. And then some would come and say, tell me more about this commitment. Yeah. And then tell me more about the God that you believe in and follow, which is great. And I'm sure your husband went through that. And I find it as a way is to build one of the ways to build a stronger community, and a way to make space for building the community within our families and friends. You visited our office here in Langley a couple of weeks ago, and you talked about the power of sitting around a table as believers other than busyness. What are the biggest roadblocks to gathering around tables right now that you see?
Well, definitely busyness is the number one factor, I think. But if I was to guess on some other reasons why people don't do it, I think we're living in a season where mental health is a very significant issue. There are social anxieties for people. And of course, if the parents are feeling that, then they can pass it on to their children. And so sometimes people don't want to engage in something like a life group, let's say, because they feel fearful of being vulnerable or accountable or just being themselves in that setting. So I think that's definitely one of the issues. I also think people sometimes feel like their house has to be pristine, that their furniture has to be the best, that they have to have this like Martha Stewart type.
You obviously haven't been to our house. Well, we have 2 kids, a dog, and everything is a mess.
And you know what? Everybody can say that.
Yes.
Everybody says that, because my house is a mess right now. But when push comes to shove, to invite someone into your home around your table, oftentimes people feel that it needs to be perfect, that they need to serve the best food. I just remember when I was a kid, my parents would often have people over for after Sunday night church and literally would serve toast and tea. It didn't people just wanted to be together. And I think those kind of anxieties, those kind of pressures, I mean, you see when people post their food on Instagram, you think, oh, I could never make that. Or I think, you know what? Make spaghetti. No one messes up spaghetti, right? And just come together and sit around tables, do dishes together, prepare the meal together, have a potluck.
Yes, you're so right. When my cousin is a chef, and he's always the pressure of cooking, and every time he comes over or used to come over, he would be like, I don't care what you make. It could be a grilled cheese sandwich. I'm happy I'm not cooking, but he just wants to be in that community. Every time Susan and I have had somebody to our house, I mean, our house is not, I don't want to say it's a giant mess. It's just well lived in. And where we see the most community is, first of all, people will walk in, they're like, well, your house is just like ours. Yes. And then the next thing is we gather in the kitchen. 100%. And even regardless of the meal and the season, we move from the dining room to the kitchen and we're all there. And the first thing that people will say is, how can I help?
Right.
And we put away the dishes together. And you touched on that. Yep. And doing the dishes together. And that's where the best conversations and more so the connection builds from there. We've had times where people are at our table and they leave. Yeah. And we never really felt we dove into a deep conversation. Right. The deep conversations come when we're kind of working hand in hand together. And I'm sure can you expand on that experience that you've had? You
know, actually, this weekend we had friends come visit us, friends that we've had for over 15 years, and they came from Ontario because we're originally from there. And it was such a life-giving moment because we were together for about 3.5 days. And so we were constantly, making coffee, sitting around the couch, sitting around the table, making dinner together, doing the dishes, having these conversations. And when you sit there for long enough and you have these people that came back into your life from being apart for so long, you just kind of pick up where you left off. And there's this trust that builds over hours, over days. And you start to talk about things, challenges, maybe memories, both good and difficult. And there is such a healing, there's such a healing that can happen around the time spent around a table that you could never actually replicate by maybe just a phone call,
right,
or a Zoom call. It happens in those moments. We sat on the back porch for hours and hours each evening, and even at times tears came.
Oh.
And things were shared. And I mean, we're all four of us in the ministry. And so you have these people that do the same kind of job as you, and they understand your challenges. And we were able to just have those moments. And I even thinking about coming here today, I thought, wow, I just had 3.5 days of community with dear old friends that, and those days will just live in my mind for so long because it was life-giving.
That is so awesome. It sounds like you guys broke the walls and you were sharing, your true self,
Mm-hmm.
being willing to be vulnerable,
Yes.
talking in probably your brokenness
Yeah.
that you guys
Yeah.
all have. And
Mm-hmm.
we all are broken. And it's so astonishing as Christians and you and your leadership and you said, we want to put on our best.
Mm-hmm.
We want our house to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at our walk with Jesus Christ, everyone around us are broken.
Yes.
And why don't we embrace that? And I find that the more that we embrace that and we share with people of our brokenness and that we're not the best in what we do,
Mm-hmm.
that shows our true vulnerability
Yes.
in our state. And that actually is what builds the conversations and builds the community. And one that I think, and if you can touch on is, our youth today, and you used, Instagram and the cooking
Mm-hmm.
piece, are so pulled to being the best at everything that they have. And you touched on mental health, and you look at where we are as a society and the pressures of young people right now is we need to be the best in everything we do. We need to go to the best school, best universities, have the best clothes. I need to appear that much better to everybody. And can you speak into how it's okay to show our brokenness, especially as a youth person, that not being the best is okay?
Yeah. It's not only okay, JP, but I think it's refreshing. I think when people can come around a table or a living room setting, young people, and they can be vulnerable with each other and accountable to each other, I think that's where true ministry happens and true friendship can form. And I think it was C.S. Lewis said that friendship is joy multiplied and sorrow divided. And I think young people, if they can come in a room and be true friends with each other and share their struggles and be vulnerable with each other, I think that's where people grow. I mean, again, go back to the early church and what was happening at the time. These people were getting saved and coming together, and there was this momentum building because of what was going on after they were filled with the Holy Spirit. And they just continue to be together, studying His Word, praying together, meeting in church together, being around the table together. If we can somehow convince young people that those 4 stakes can ground their tent, so to speak, then we can put them on a path of health and spiritual growth like never before. That we can put down the phones and say, you know what, that Instagram world, that picture, that post, they're trying to put their best foot forward, but real life happens and not everything is perfect. And that's okay. And that's when you can come together, and that's when you can come before the Lord and say, God, I need you. We need each other. that's how we're going to grow. As parents, I think we need to model that.
Right.
I think we need to model that.
Well, I think as a parent, our best critics are our children, because my kids will tell me that I am not perfect in so many ways, how I dress, everything. And I think it's so refreshing when our kids can speak truth to us. Mm-hmm. And as parents, how do we speak truth to the kids? For me, though, on a personal note, I would say I'm more of an extrovert. I have no problem sharing who I am and talking to millions of people, not millions, as many people as possible. Susan often will say to me, you just go up to strangers and start talking. And she's like, how do you do that? And my wife is more of an introvert. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it's hard to find a community for her. We both have great, deep, long-term friendships with many people of faith and our connection together. And we complement each other in doing that. But one of the things, if you can touch into, is how do you get that for a youthful person who's an introvert, to get them out of that shell? Because it's so easy just to sit in front of a screen and not engage. How do you what kind of encouraging words do you have? And the term I have is having and seeking table time with those introverts.
Well, I mean, I'm an extrovert too. So I think introverts, maybe they need more time to process and to think when conversations are happening. So I think if in order to bring an introvert into community, I think a smaller group is probably something that would benefit them more. I know even in our life group, we have lots of introverts in our life group, and we kind of have a few ground rules too, that the extroverts can't always do the speaking. And so, but sometimes some introverts just like to listen, and that's their way of engaging. But to give them the time and the space in a smaller group to engage with other people, I think that's really important. There's so much they have to offer, and to let them know that, like, hey, we're going to talk about this, or whatever questions you're bringing to the table. I'm going to give you some space to think about that, but I'm going to call on you at the end and just ask them to engage. Friendship is huge. And so putting them in groups with people that they know that they're going to connect with and that they can have friendships with, setting people in groups is so important. Even as a children's pastor, I know that in order for people to belong and really, they need to have someone that they connect with. So as pastors, as parents, we need to do the work of connecting those who are more introverted to other people so that they can get into this place of community, be comfortable around the table, feel like they can engage and participate. I think it's important. I think we need to be cognizant, especially if we're an extrovert. We need to be very cognizant of how the introvert might feel in a setting and make concession for that.
That's very well said. You touch on friendship.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to have strong friendships, especially, I don't know, I was going to say especially as a youth, but I think
for all of us.
All of us.
Mm-hmm.
To have someone you trust, where you can share where you're at. A lot of people who are married for a long time, you're 30 years, Susan and I are 27 years. Like, without question, Susan is my best friend, and I share everything with her. It's also important for me to have my male friends where I can share in a different way and be on that journey with them. And for my children, it's, I look at how the seasons that they've gone through, when they have a strong friend, it is so great. Mm-hmm. The challenge is this social media world we live in is building that trust, having a friendship that you can trust. And it's so easy as a parent, I feel I could say, well, you're never alone. God is always with you. As a teenager or a young adult, and even some adults are just like, I don't see that. I know that God's there, but I need that connection of another person to speak to. And, we're always trying to find ways to connect people in any way possible to build those friendships. But it takes a lot of time. And I would say even as an extrovert, there's a lot of, like, my kids will say to me, and I wonder if you have this, is, wow, Jenni, you must have a lot of friends. And I would, and it's my kids will say, so many people, friend. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't really have a lot of very, very close friends. I agree. Can you touch more to that?
I mean, I would consider myself maybe a one friend wonder, where I have one best friend that I've had for 30 years. We only lived in the same town for like a few months.
Oh, wow.
So a ministry friend, but we connect weekly. We bear one another's burdens. We share. We're accountable to each other. In fact, right now we're reading through the Bible this year together through the Bible app. So we take time to make these moments of connection because it's so important to me. In the ministry too, sometimes you want to have friends that are in the same boat as you. And my best friend has been in ministry for 30 years as well. And so I think, everybody's different. Some people have, like dozens and dozens of what they would consider best friends. But for me, I need one person who I can tell anything to, be vulnerable with, pray together with. And I have that. And it is the game changer in my life. I mean, again, like you said, my husband is my best friend for sure, but I have this deep relationship that undeniably has kept me stabilized through a lot of storms, kept me accountable to my spiritual disciplines. We have prayed for each other's children, like the seasons of both. Her children are a little bit younger than mine, but through the seasons of life, we have gone to war in prayer for each other's children's. And so, I don't know what I'd do without her. But like I said, I just need that one.
Right. That is so encouraging to hear. One of the prayers we constantly have is building community. How do you stay in community? And that is part of it, having the one person you can speak to. And that's not discounting our spouse by any means.
Not
it's
at all.
the spouse. In my case, Susan, she knows everything. But there are times where being fully transparent with you and those listening, there's times where it's Susan doesn't want to hear what I'm going through. Like she's like, I don't need to hear that again. And I need someone who's just going to sit and listen. And Susan does that, but at times she's like, maybe you should and I won't share the person's name here, but give him a call.
Yes.
He might want to hear this. Yes. It gives her a bit of a break.
And for women, we have more words that we need to get out in one day. So, if you feel like you need to just keep going with your words, you call up your best friend and they'll listen for an hour.
And Susan has that as well.
That's
and there's
good.
Times where I'm like, I don't need to hear all that either. And she knows that. I think over time you start knowing when to pick up the phone and call and go for a walk with someone else.
Right.
I feel this conversation we went one direction and we've kind of shifted, and we actually went a little bit more in our personal journeys with each other. And oddly enough, I think those who were getting this together knew that. And so it ends with, I want to end with, if you can tell me a little bit of a challenging time, if you don't mind, where you found healing through Christ, through that table time that you described. Mm-hmm. And I know many times in our lives and many people's lives is we go through ups and downs, especially as in marriage or friendships and even raising a family. And the most healing time for us is when we've spent time in prayer together. But tell me a bit of something that happened at a table time with you and your family, if you don't mind.
Well, definitely. I alluded earlier to my weekend with friends. That was very healing for me. But I think if there's ever an issue going on between our children, the table is the place to bring it to a point of resolution, have conversations. Sometimes those conversations are difficult. Sometimes those conversations get heated. And sometimes, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I've had children stand up and walk out of the room and go to their bedroom and slam the door and say they're not coming back. And then you have to,
Well, thank you for sharing. I thought we were the only family that went through that.
If you're a parent out there and you're walking through raising your kids, let me tell you, it's a good time to bring up issues that need to be brought up, to coach them through things, to, oftentimes one of our biggest issues raising kids was sibling rivalry, to bring two face-to-face across the table, to have moments of forgiveness, to ask them, share with your sister how you feel. Like those moments around the table have brought a lot of healing. Even mother-daughter, father-daughter, whatever. Like we've had moments around a table that have been so life-giving, where honesty flows, where forgiveness flows. It's not just eating a meal together, but it's an opportunity to bring reconciliation. We're in the Ministry of Reconciliation. And so for sure, with my kids, I think, you know what, I actually really believe that, when there's something that happens in a family that's, where sin has happened, oftentimes families don't want to talk about it. Maybe it's a sin that happened inside your family or somebody that outside has affected your family. Oftentimes we don't want to talk about that because we want to bury it because it's too painful.
Yeah, we don't want to get into the mess.
It's too painful. You have to embrace the mess. And I think if you can have conversations with your children around sin, whether it's their sin, your sin, somebody else's sin, what it says to your children is, you know what? If you ever mess up, doesn't matter if it's when you're 12, 18, 28, 48, you know that you can come back around this table and be honest and share, and that there can be healing and forgiveness, and we will be there for each other. But if you never have those conversations, if you never talk about things that are hard, then they won't ever feel like they can come back to you, and they will bury it and they will hide it and it will fester because there wasn't a safe place.
You're absolutely right.
Let the table be a safe place.
You're absolutely right. And I feel that, as parents, it's led by the parents. There's many times where Susan and I will have not heated conversations, but disagreements at the table. And then our children see us talk that through. And then they see that, okay, it's a safe place to talk things
100%.
through. So that reminds me of where we've had people at our dinner table, especially friends of our kids, and they would come and they would say, this is weird that you sit at the table and that you guys talk. You don't sit in front of the TV. Your mom and dad sit with you guys at the table. And my kids look at him and go, and it was such a great moment for Susan. I was like, that's weird that your parents don't sit at the table with you guys. Our kids think this is normal, and it is our normal, and that should be normal from all of our communities and those we engage with. And so for us, we were like, hopefully that child that had the opportunity to eat with us goes home and says, hey, Susan and JP's family or my friend's family, they sit at the dinner table together. Let's try that. As we get busier and busier, it's harder and harder to find the time. And it's not because we don't make it a priority. Our children's lives are just getting busier. One is entering university, activities, and we try to minimize those activities. But we've not shied away from the dinner table, and we sit at the table 2 to 3 times a week. And then it's also Saturdays. Saturday's an intentional day that it doesn't matter what's going on. And I hope that, and maybe you can coach me on this, is we've planted those seeds, and as they get older and they start living their own lives and growing with their own families, Saturdays will come back to mom and dad's house, or they've started that trend that Saturdays is nothing takes precedence on this dinner for the family.
Absolutely. They will pick up on your traditions. They, when they start having children of their own, they will come back to them as anchors in their life, that they know this is the way that I was raised and this is the way I'm going to raise my kids. And it's beautiful to see, because I'm just in that in that stage where I'm launching children, right?
Right.
And I have a granddaughter. And so I can see some of the things that we've instilled in them starting to unfold in their now, marriages. So, yeah, I pray, sometimes as we are raising kids, we have to think of it as the long game.
Right, yes.
Whatever spiritual disciplines, whatever family habits that we have will actually affect our grandchildren and their children, because these things will be passed on.
Yes.
And so when you are engaging in the discipleship process of your children, whether it's around the table, bedtime, in the car on the way somewhere, praying, as you're dropping them off for school, please know that your children will do this for their children. You are investing in your future grandchildren. What a thought. Sometimes we don't think of it when we're in the craziness of parenting. We don't think about how our discipline of being intentional is going to affect future generations. It's a beautiful thought.
Yeah, that is so well said, where it's the little things that we do, and continuing to do those little things have such an impact in the long game of raising families and the generations that it comes by planting that seed over and over again. Jenni, it's been a pleasure to spend time with you and have this conversation. I feel that we could keep going for hours and hours, put two extroverts together,
Yes.
and the conversation keeps flowing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your heart and your ministry and just your love for the next generation and how important that is.
It was a pleasure to be here.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jenni as much as I did, and I pray you feel inspired to create your own table where others can gather. If you wish to talk about this further, or if it brought up something that you would like to talk through, you can have a free one-time consultation with one of our registered counselors at Focus on the Family Canada over the phone. Give us a call at 1-800-661-9800 to request a consult. It's our gift to you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Thriving Family, a podcast from Focus on the Family Canada. If you like this episode, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to subscribe. If you feel led, you can make a donation at focusonthefamily.ca/podcast giving, or find the link in the episode notes. This program is available ad-free because of the generosity of our donors. Most importantly, remember that we are here for you and your family.